In a land where the wind blows without words, where dust covers every footprint as if no one has ever walked there. Nature still operates in silence. The sun has not yet risen, but life has already transformed. A soft snort sounded through the tall grass. A muscular figure was moving slowly, not in a hurry, not flinching. Ahead, a lion was lurking. In its golden eyes, there was hunger, but also wariness. The buffalo did not turn around and run. It stopped. It bowed its head. Its two curved horns flashed in the morning sun like two primitive axes. And then, it charged. In that moment, everything turned upside down. Nature has no laws, but every living thing understands them. It is not the strongest who survives, but the one who fights back at the right time. This is the story of seemingly silent horns that can change the game. When claws are no longer the only weapons, nature begins to tell another story, the story of the hunted rising to crush the predator. In the grasslands that stretched to the horizon, where every breath of wind carried the breath of instinct, a moment of silence was waiting to explode. Against the bright sunlit sky, the heat shimmering like a knife, a slender shadow glided through the short grass, silently, without a sound. A female cheetah. It requires no muscle power. It is the definition of speed. It is nature's sharpest blade. His eyes scanned the herd. But then, suddenly, his gaze locked on a larger shape than the others, a Grant's gazelle leaving the herd. Big, strong, but lost. Just one precise pounce, just knock it to the ground, and it's done. The cheetah charged like lightning. Grass blew up in clumps. Its claws hit the ground like drums. Everything was happening according to the script of a mature predator. But the antelope did not run away in despair. It stopped. Before the swoop, it turned its head. A slight but precise turn. The horns extended like sharp swords. They were more than decoration. They were a warning, a declaration of war. The stab made no sound. There was only a choking void. One horn was driven into the predator's belly. Deep, clean, precise. Skin was torn. Blood flowed. Behind the muscle layer, the stomach, liver, bladder, all shook like a broken string. The cheetah roared, but there was no way back. The antelope pinned it to the ground, nearly double its weight. Alone, but not weak. In seconds, the balance of life shifts. Grant's gazelle did the impossible. It not only survived, it prevailed. And the cheetah, if it cannot run, cannot live. In this world, speed is life, and the horn is the declaration that not all hunters are safe. In a place where the ground is cracked like the planet's aged skin, where the sun melts the will and the wind blows up every speck of red dust, life goes on, albeit slowly and dangerously. On the horizon, a herd of elephants was moving. Their footsteps were heavy but steady, leaving a trail of dust like the tracks of an ancient army. In the middle of the herd was a mother elephant and her baby, only a few months old. The baby elephant was still not used to the harsh rhythm of migration. Every step was a struggle. Every time it raised its head, it looked anxiously for its mother. Far away, in the low grass, someone was watching, a pride of lions, silent, patient, eyes as sharp as knives. They didn't need to hunt a swift antelope. They had set their sights on an easier prize, a stray calf. And now, as the mother and her calf separated for a moment, the silence was broken. They rushed forward, but they did not expect that the one they thought was prey was as towering as a fortress. The mother elephant turned around, her ears spread wide like angry sails. A roar rang out, reverberating into the ground, causing the flock of birds in the distance to take flight in panic. And then, the long, curved, sharp tusk like an ivory blade, was lowered. The tip was pointed at the enemy. The lions stopped. They knew the strike from the elephant's horn was more than a counterattack. It was a warning in blood. Each step the mother elephant took was a coercive blow, forcing the predators back, not hasty, but unstoppable. The tusk was no longer just a symbol of strength, but now a living fortress around her child. The calf clung tightly between her legs, as if it understood that its life depended entirely on that roaring love. The lions tried to find an opening, but every time they tried to get close, from left, right, or behind, the white horns would flash in warning. The near misses were enough to make the pride flinch. Then they left, not because of hunger, but because of the determination in her eyes, because the tusk, a weapon born not to kill but to protect, proved the power of life that comes from maternal love. In that moment, nature seemed to stop breathing. The sky changed color. The rolling rain clouds retreated silently south, leaving the acacia steppe a heavy void, and then, like a soundless wave, the herds of wildebeest began to move. Thousands of hooves pounded the soft earth, raising dust in the air, creating a thick black band that wound through the vast space like a living river. Their journey, more than just a migratory instinct, is a great retreat from the dwindling fertile land, a farewell to the lush short grass of the Serengeti, and a journey to the land beyond, where both hope and danger lie. But as the footsteps lengthened south, in the bushes at the edge of the reserve, someone else was waiting. 3 cheetahs, hungry and silent, glided in the shadow of the pack. This was their last chance before the prey disappeared from their territory. A moment's delay, and the feast would never come. They don't rush in. They pick their target, not an old, weak animal, or a newborn that's easily separated from the pack. They pick a fledgling, just out of nursing, but not yet seasoned enough to be a true warrior, a challenge that balances risk and reward. And then they attacked. Dust rose. The herd parted like waves breaking rocks. Hooves pounded, the wind whistled, and a spine-chilling growl. In the chaos, the young wildebeest was isolated, alone, exposed, and facing 3 seasoned predators. But it did not run away. It turned around, its legs trembled, its chest heaved, and its eyes were wide. But instead of retreating, it lowered its center of gravity. It stood straight, its horns pointed toward the danger, and one by one, it repelled the attacks. Misdirected thrusts, failed lunges. That youthful courage forced all 3 cheetahs to retreat. Not a bite, not a fall. In the end, it was they, the predators, who had to retreat. That wildebeest, for the first time, crossed the threshold of immaturity into the ranks of true survivors. But the journey is not over. In the coming months, the herd will cross the Grumeti River, where Nile crocodiles lurk beneath the still waters. Their steel jaws are ready to drag unsuspecting lives to the depths. As they leave the fertile land, the wildebeest take with them more than just dust and sweat. They also take with them nature's harshest lessons that to survive, you sometimes have to stand your ground, even when you're alone. Wildebeest herds used to move as a single unit, thousands of them migrating in search of water, grass, and life. But when the safety line is crossed, primal instincts kick in. Each animal now looks out for itself, a lost cub. Its legs trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of its own body betraying it. Each step seemed to drag the sky with it. No one turned back, no one waited for it, not a single sympathetic look, only the sound of approaching claws. Behind, the 3 cheetahs moved like ghosts, no sound, no hesitation. They did not rush to attack. They waited for the fall, and the prey knew it. By some strange effort, The young wildebeest kept its eyes fixed on the nearest danger. It did not cry out. It did not call for help. It just kept running, as if it had one last chance, even if it was just an illusion. The chase lasted longer than any predator could have hoped for. The chases, the close calls, the missed ones. Panting echoed from both the hunted and the predators. The cheetah's light legs began to betray them. Energy was drained, and each breath became heavier. And then, the unexpected happened. No final blow, no blood, no victory. The cheetahs stopped, not out of pity, but out of exhaustion. They had invested everything: time, energy, opportunity, but the price of a kill today was too high. They walked away, slowly, without looking back, and the wildebeest, staggering, exhausted, still stood, not exactly a victor, but a survivor. In a land of red dust, where time seems to slow down under the scorching sun, a male rhino is pursuing his most primal instinct to reproduce, to pass on his genes, to continue his bloodline. He is huge, muscular, his eyes are cloudy as if covered in mist, but inside is a whirlwind of unbridled passion. Before him stood a female, as heavy as a motorboat, her body covered in thick, armor-like skin. But her eyes were not on the approaching figure. Her gaze was fixed on the back, where her small child was huddled in her mother's shadow, shivering in the dense winds and dust. He didn't care. Head down, horns pointed, he charged. Dirt flew, and clouds of dust covered everything like a giant mist. There was no roar, no warning, just the sound of hooves scraping the ground, of muscles colliding, and the sickening screech of skin on skin. In that moment, the calf disappeared into the dust. Rhinos don't see well. They can only see about 100 feet in ideal conditions. Now, visibility was near zero, and every step the bull took could be a death sentence for the calf. Mom turned around, intending to run, but he didn't stop. In a fit of instinct, he launched a thunderous headbutt, his 20-inch-long horn piercing her hip, lifting her hindquarters off the ground. She roared, not in pain, but in fear for her child. Every time she stumbled back, dust rose, obscuring everything. But then, slowly, light filtered through. The cloud of dust slowly dissipated, and in the silence, the child stood there, intact, safe. The male stopped. He realized he could push a mother away, but he couldn't make her submit. In this world, violence can repel, can hurt, but sometimes motherly love, silent but fierce, is the final, insurmountable barrier. In the stifling heat of midday, where the sun poured invisible waves of fire across the ground, 3 young lions lay in the sparse shade of the bushes. 2 females and 1 male, all 5 years old, in their prime and most vigorous. Their breathing was slow, their muscles relaxed from the previous hunt. It seemed like a typical scene lions relaxing in the middle of the day, showing no signs of stress. But then, that peace was broken by a living mass of steel weighing over 2 tons entering the frame, a white rhinoceros, huge, silent, and completely uninvited, was making its way toward the green grass. There was no roar, no chase, just the presence of 2 species at the top of the food chain at the same time made the whole field hold its breath. Lions were not stupid. They knew their limits. It was too risky to take on a creature that could use a horn longer than a sword to cut through thick flesh. But the rhino, with its poor eyesight, had a keen nose. It caught the scent of the big cat and kept moving towards it, closer, closer, until it was so close that it could hear the heavy breathing of one of the lionesses. Uneasy, one of the lions started and ran. The rhino now noticed. Something was moving. very close. She spun around, taking a defensive stance, but instead of running away, the second lioness lingered behind, her eyes flashing. In the moment the rhino was distracted, she pounced, a preemptive strike. Unfortunately, the rhino was not one to be ambushed. It spun around. Its long horn flew through the air, whoosh, just inches from the lion's flank. In an instant, the lion knew it had overreacted. It let go, turned, and ran, disappearing into the bushes as if it had never been there. The rhino was angry now. He was no longer calm. And right in front of him, the male lion, the only one left, was standing there, not running, not backing down, eye to eye. Amidst the rugged cliffs where the wind howls in bitter cold, where a misstep can cost you your life, there are creatures that not only survive, but fight to prove their worth. The sun had not yet penetrated the morning mist, but halfway up the mountain, two figures stood facing each other, no growls, no hesitation, just hard stares, two bodies as solid as rocks. Then, boom! The sound of collision echoed throughout the valley. It was no accident. When two bighorn rams collide, they generate impacts of more than 65 feet per hour. That's enough to kill a human. But for them, it's just foreplay. The butts continued. 10, then 20, then 30. No one backed down. No one gave up. Because in their world, victory was not just about honor. It was about the continuation of the species. Behind each charge is a remarkable bone structure, a skull twice as thick to absorb shock, and horns that weigh nearly 30 pounds, almost as much as the rest of their skeleton. But those horns don't come overnight. It takes a ram 7 or 8 years to grow strong enough, big enough, to enter this battlefield. Each twist of his horn represents a year of waiting, a year of patience, and now, the right to confront and win the only chance access to the female. These battles can last all day, even more than 24 hours. But there is no room for pity, no referee. There can only be one winner, and the prize is continued life through the next generation. In a place where only rocks and frost reign, the horned warriors continue their wordless battles, not because of hatred, but because it is the only way to survive, and to be heard in the epic of the mountains and forests. In the scorching heat of the wilderness, where the dry grass turns golden underfoot, a young man waits for the moment to assert his position. Sweat barely dries on his dark fur. His heart beats like a drumbeat in the ground, not out of fear, but out of desire to step out from the shadow of the old males, to challenge the old order and rewrite the rules with his horns. Across the way, a dominant male staggered. The sun had done its work, burning strength, softening muscles, and bringing the strongest to their knees. But even as strength cracked, honor remained intact. The old male held his head high, his horns raised, as if he had never feared anyone. Then, no declaration of war was needed. A lightning strike. The two horns clashed, creating a sound like steel on steel that echoed throughout the air. This was no longer a show. This was a real battle, between youth that had never tasted defeat and old age that was trying to cling to its broken crown. Every headbutt is a declaration I come to take it all. Dust rose, and the ground shook with the kicks. There were no spectators, no whistles, just pure power and the will to survive. But then, like all shifts of power in nature, pride bent under the strength of youth. The old male backed away, then turned away, never looked back. Victory calls the newcomer. But this was not the end. For the young, the first victory was only a gateway into a maze of trials. The scent of territory was not yet theirs. The females stood at the edges, watching with cold eyes. They were not convinced by the power of the moment, but by the persistence, which had to be demonstrated every day, standing guard in the scorching sun, every night guarding the territory from new challengers. Now, the winner must learn to be worthy. In the animal kingdom, horns are more than weapons. They are crowns, they are honors, they are banners that beckon challenges. And for the young stag who won today, the real journey has only just begun. At a height where the air is so thin that every breath is a struggle, amid sheer cliffs that only creatures born with courage and steady feet dare to tread, a mountain goat grazes as if it were the ruler of the land. But not far below, amid the shadows and the morning mist, a lithe figure lurked. It was a female mountain lion, young, hungry, and desperate. In her eyes, the goat was no ordinary creature. It was a meal that could mean the difference between life and death. And she chose to act. Without waiting, without stalking, the mountain lion leapt from the bushes, betting everything on a head-on leap. But that haste deprived the big cat of its most dangerous weapon, the element of surprise. The mountain goat, with its survival instincts honed over the years, turned to avoid the attack. But the dodge put it right on the edge of the cliff, a place where death was just a step away. The mountain lion advanced, but hesitated. This was not its battlefield. The cliffs did not allow for bold charges or quick sprints. On the contrary, this was where the mountain goat was born to live and fight. With cloven hooves covered in rough hide, it clung to each ledge as if the ground were part of its body. And when the opportunity arose, it counterattacked. Not with a conventional headbutt. The mountain goat does not headbutt like many other animals. It stabs, really stabs, with its long, dagger-like, spear-like horns. A sharp natural weapon that can reach up to 12 inches long. The counterattack sends the mountain lion back, but it does not yield. The fight broke out on the edge of a cliff where one wrong move could mean death. The mountain lion used speed to counter, with a body made up of 70% fast-twitch muscle, nearly twice as much as a human. It struck with lightning speed. But the mountain goat had something the mountain lion didn't: an inch-thick hide, a fleshy shield that protected it from sharp claws. The two collided, bounced off, and then charged again. It was no longer a hunt, it was a fight to the death with no spectators, no rules, just instinct and determination. The mountain goat did not chase. It stood there, proud, exhausted but intact. The wind blew gently across the dry grasslands, swirling the dust in small circles, as if nature were whispering something. On the red dirt trail dotted with footprints, a wild dog stood motionless. Its eyes never left the heavy body lying before it, an impala. The prey's breath was still there, trembling and weak, rising into the air like smoke from a dying fire. There was no warning, no longer stalking. In an instant, the dog was on, its teeth sunk into the impala's belly, pulling with all its accumulated hunger and savagery. The impala screamed, a heart-rending sound, part pain, part desperate attempt to cling to life. It did not collapse. Instead, it strained, its forelegs jerking, trying to stand even as its body was being torn apart inch by inch. Part of its internal organs were exposed, hanging in the air, while the impala's eyes were still wide open, full of survival instinct. It kicked, it jerked, it stretched, as if with one strong enough bounce it could escape this nightmare. But the wild dog did not retreat. It held on, growled, and dragged its prey along the ground, each bite deepening the already torn body. The call rang out, short, sharp, but as far-reaching as the beat of a drum. The wild dog raised its head, its eyes blazing with fire. It was calling to its brethren. Slowly, but surely, other dark shapes appeared along the horizon. The pack had heard the call to blood. They came, step by step, until the circle was closed. In its agony, the impala did not give up. It shook its head, butting its horns into the approaching darkness. One last time, a fight filled with primal pride, but nature did not stop to mourn. In an instant, the entire pack was on it, like sharp daggers piercing the night. The tearing and biting rang out, chaotic and ferocious. In a few seconds, the fighting stopped, and the impala fell. Forever. The moment was cruel, but also fulfilling. This is how wild dogs hunt, not in the flash of a leopard, not in the silence of a cat, but in a long, bloody, grueling torture. They do not kill immediately. They let their prey live, writhe, fight back. And then each blow, each bite becomes a cruel symphony of survival instinct. And when you see it, it is not to judge, but to understand. Because in each brutal beat, there is the balance of an entire world. There is no evil. There is no good. There is only instinct. And sometimes, in the most heartbreaking moment, nature shows its purest beauty. What we have just witnessed is not victory, nor defeat. It is just a small slice of the silent life of all creatures, when horns stand tall among the wild grass, not in pride, but in survival. That is the moment nature whispers of true strength. In every thrust, fear is turned into action. In every step toward danger, the age-old instinct to fight against fate. And in the midst of it all, a quiet truth in nature. The weak can fight back. And sometimes, that fight changes everything. What about us, are we? Those on the sidelines of the war, sophisticated enough to understand that power lies not in claws, but in the will to live. Because when the screen goes off and the sound stops, nature continues its own dialogue. The question is, are we still listening?